Get in the know. Non-stop Vikings talk. It's Purple Daily on Score North and ScoreNorth.com. Purple Daily, presented by Surly Brewing Company.
Reckless speculation.
Reckless speculation.
Oh, I love it when one of us texts the group thread and says, should the Vikings make this trade? Or I have an idea for a reckless speculation segment on the Vikings. This exact text exchange took place. I think it was Judd initiating. You guys seeing the Trey Lance stuff?
Oh, it was Dex.
That might have been Dex.
Oh, Dex?
Dex saw it.
You give the Judd too. That's fine.
I brought up the Trey Lance thing a week ago, and we briefly touched on it. And then Dex saw that Michael Silver, an NFL insider.
Okay, so Judd brought it up initially. Dex brought up the Michael Silver. And then I texted you guys this morning and said a trade idea hit me like a bolt of lightning.
Yep.
So we'll get into all of this. This is a bonus episode of Purple Daily. We're gonna hit you with some bonus episodes here during the juicy part of the offseason because there's not enough show to contain all of the things that are to be talked about. So we're gonna hit you with some bonus episodes presented by our friends over at TCL. Hopefully you're watching playoff football on your TCL TV because they have award-winning TVs for any budget, any space, all with stunning picture quality. And TCL makes more than just TVs. They offer mobile products, audio devices, home appliances. TCL brings you joy and simplicity through innovative technology, and Surly brings you joy as well.
The official beer, not only of our fine show, Purple Daily, but the official beer of Reckless Speculation as well. Because you know what? If you're going to recklessly speculate, as Dex knows too, you got to be sipping on something. And that could be a Furious or a Logic Bomb or an Axeman or a Before I Die. Whatever it is, Surly and Reckless Speculation, gentlemen, they fit like a glove. Surly Brewing.
Yes. All right. According to Michael Silver of the San Francisco Chronicle. So Mike Silver used to be a longtime NFL.com, NFL Network guy. He even 3 years ago during like the first part of COVID on Mackie and Judd, we did one of those, see how many famous sports figures from Minnesota you can get into a Zoom call at once.
Oh, yeah.
And it extended, like people just started contacting people beyond Minnesota. And like Mike Silver wound up in the Zoom chat for like an hour, just hanging out. It was like Mike Silver, Joe Mauer, Ryan Saunders, Lindsey Whalen.
Yeah.
There's a couple other, Matthew Hatchett made his way in there.
That's right.
We should find that and repost it. But this is what he said in the San Francisco Chronicle. San Francisco might not fetch more than a third-round pick in return for Trey Lance, based on what Michael is hearing from rival executives across the league. Here's the snippet. Even if the Niners are receptive to potential trade offers for Trey Lance after the season, they won't come close to recouping the haul that they gave up to move up to get him. Based on my conversations with several teams' general managers and other high-ranking front office executives, Lance would unlikely to net much more than a third-round selection, though it's definitely possible that there's a team that could be motivated to give up more. And then there's some speculation that, if you're a team like the Vikings, you're looking to maybe stash a guy behind Kirk Cousins for a minute and look out for your future. Who's going to be throwing passes to Justin Jefferson in the future? That this could be an interesting possibility. So if a third-round pick, maybe a little more, is the asking price based on several, as Mike Silver says, high-ranking front office executives, what do you think about that?
Well, first of all, if it's a third-round pick, I do it yesterday. But here's what makes this intriguing. So this is actually reckless speculation, but it's reckless speculation like Manny's or Murray style. So Silver is a very plugged in, longtime NFL .com guy, SI guy back in the day. He is now working for the San Francisco Chronicle. So he is in the belly of the beast in San Francisco. Okay. This report also goes with he's being told by team sources, and nobody schmoozes sources like this guy. Silver's really good at this.
He is, yes.
So Brock Purdy, he is told, is going to be the starter next season. And it sounds like he's sort of shooting down there's going to be a competition for it, that Brock Purdy, with how well he's done, is in line to start. Okay. So I give what he's reporting credibility that goes beyond Declan sending me a note last night saying, hey, if you could get a third round pick or trade a third round pick. I do this, and I've actually too got a list of pros and cons here on Trey Lance.
Yeah, that's funny. I literally have a list of pros and cons in front of me too. That's funny.
But that being said, let's just take the question. Believing that this is on the right track to possibly be extremely true, a third round pick? I do more than a third round pick, but a third round pick,
the Niners
I'll
called
walk
Judd.
it there.
The Niners are like, we'll take a third round pick. Judd's like, no, I feel terrible. I'm actually going to give you more than that.
Yep, I want to give you something else too, but I will walk. If I was Kwesi, I would walk the third round pick to the Bay Area to hand it to San Francisco.
Okay, I actually have a different idea for the 49ers, which we can get into here shortly. But let's go through some of our pros and cons. So obviously, the cons list is relevant because Trey Lance, he's banged up. He's already 2 years into his 5-year rookie scale contract, and he has really proven nothing. Like his stock has fallen from trade multiple first-round picks to go up to get him because he's a 6'5", 220-pound athletic phenom, and now he's just like a guy that they might cast aside. It's 2 years later, and he's just like, I guess we're gonna go with the guy that was the last pick in the draft, and if we can get a third-round pick. The fact that the Niners, before the injury, were so worried about his accuracy and ability to sort of like lead as a young quarterback that they didn't trade Jimmy Garoppolo. They kind of kept Garoppolo on a side field just in case, break glass in case of emergency. And they wound up, after the injury, going with Garoppolo. And accuracy has been a huge problem. So there are definitely some things. He's not a sure bet at all. Not that any young quarterback is. But he's 22 years old. He's going to be 23 in May. So he's still the age that he's younger than some of the college quarterbacks that are going to come out 2 years after his draft class.
Correct.
He can make plays with his legs. He was, like I said, a top 3 overall pick 2 years ago. So if you're Kwesi and you're looking for, like he did the trade for Jalen Reagor, right? Well, that was a guy that was a first-round pick. He might have whiffed on that one because it doesn't look like Jalen Reagor can run routes. And Trey Lance has cap hits of just $9 million and $10 million the next couple of years. So if he were to become your starting quarterback, and then there'd be a 5th-year option if you triggered it. So if he were to become your starting quarterback, he'd be making a lot less money than the current quarterback is making. So those are things to weigh here in this conversation.
So among the potential pros that I have, and it's going to sound weird because this is going to sound like a con when I say it, but he has played only 9 games of football since the pandemic year 2020. NDSU's season got canceled, and he played in what basically became a Trey Lance showcase game. And since then, he played 4 games. I think he got into 8 games total with San Fran in the last 2 years. But here's the pro. He has developed or been developed for a couple of years now under Kyle Shanahan, who we all know is a great quarterback mind. And as we discussed, I think yesterday, Kevin O'Connell sort of comes from that family, that same philosophy. So you would be planting a quarterback who's been developed by Shanahan into a culture and into a system that is not going to be, this is a different system. Everything is different. The other thing that people I haven't heard talk about enough, but it's pretty important because it allows you to it allows a judgment to be made. The 2 days of joint practices that San Francisco held at TCO Performance Center here last summer allow the Vikings to basically, and this is the only thing that teams don't like about joint practices, Tyler Thigpen, is it allows teams to get a long look at players in practice setting, which is incredibly important, and more importantly, get those players on film. So O'Connell very much had the ability to make judgments. He's friends with Shanahan, but more importantly, he saw him. The second thing, or the third thing, is if Trey Lance, now he got hurt running, okay, and he broke his ankle, and this has been a problem. That being said, if he recovers in full, there's probably a happy medium between, dude, you don't need to take that hit, but you're mobile. Like, I'm assuming
we're not looking for 1,000 yards rushing here. Just keep plays alive.
I'm assuming his mobility won't be gone. And then, Phil, as you said, the contract's really intriguing because it gives you a couple of years of a look-see. And so in my world, I'm probably projecting that he would start in 24. So it gives you 1 year as a starter. I don't think he starts in 23 because I think Kirk is here. And that's going to make you judge quickly because my first con is this, and this is the interesting thing. I forgot this one. Okay. So you're saying he's got the 5th-year option, which he does, and you can exercise it. I forgot before the agreement between Kyler Murray and the Cardinals on an extension was worked out, that 5th-year option that the Cardinals initially picked up was $29.7 million for one season, fully guaranteed in 2023.
Mm-hmm.
So he then signed an extension and they smoothed it out. The point being is, when it comes to quarterbacks, the 5th-year option is not really an option as much. Like with Jefferson, it is. With a quarterback, you're going to want to smooth that out. So basically, the 24 contract is awesome, but you need to make a decision. But that being said, again, if the return's a 3rd-round pick, okay, I'll make that decision.
Yeah, and a couple things, just to go back to a couple things on your pros and cons list. Let's go to the contract for a second. I think and I am projecting way out here because you'd have to make the trade, and then he'd have to be good and develop, and then you'd have to want to extend him to get to where I'm about to go with this conversation. But he's going to be 23 this year. Well, his age lines up with the year on the calendar, right? He's 23 in 23, 24 and 24.
Yep, May.
So his 5th-year option would be 25. So if you signed into an extension, it would kind of wipe out, you'd probably smooth out the 25 cap hit. Because that 5th-year option winds up being, I'd have to go look at like the NFL rules, but it winds up being the equivalent of like a transition tag player, not a franchise tag, but like a transition tag player. So it's not super cheap, but it's less than you would pay like for an elite quarterback on the market. But my point is, he would be like 25, 26 years old when a new contract kicks in.
Yep.
And if you felt good enough about him, it wouldn't be like the last 5 years where, all right, well, we're getting a guy who is 30 and then he's 32 on the next discussion. Now he's 34. And you're only doing these like ironclad 1 and 2 year extensions that give you no wiggle room to move money around. That's the beauty of an extension for a 26-year-old quarterback. If it's like a 6-year deal or something, you can knock out the cap hit, big signing bonus, knock out the cap hit in the first couple of years.
Yep.
And you can maneuver money around. So, again, that's like 3 steps down the road. Okay, on the games played thing, so Trey Lance has only started 21 games since high school.
Mm-hmm.
He played 1 full season at NDSU, and he was dominant. He threw 1 interception, period, at NDSU. None as a starter in a full year. So he was like 28 or 30 touchdowns or something. No interceptions. Over 1,000 yards rushing, and I get it. It's FCS competition. If you would have played in the Big Ten or something, it might have been different. But do you view that as, wow, I mean, I know he's coming off an injury, but the guy's like relatively fresh considering, or do you say, boy, that is a tall task to go from only playing 21 games, none in big-time college football, to then being a viable starter in the NFL?
So the interesting thing about this is the 49ers franchise with Shanahan and Lynch has proven to be pretty damn smart. Like they've been very, very successful. They are not a fluky franchise. They considered Trey Lance coming out of NDSU. So with nothing on film in the National Football League, to swap 3 first-round picks and a 2022 at the time 3rd-round pick to the Dolphins to move up 9 spots. So if that's what the Niners thought, all right, to me that's interesting because it's not just a fly that Kyle Shanahan's not this quarterback desperate. I can't find one guy. He actually can identify them. The second thing is this is where I rely on O'Connell. This is where like Spielman scared me because I always felt that a lot of his QB moves came out of a sense of desperation of I've got to find one. I don't want that. I want someone who says, you know what? And that's where I'm going back to. I think those 2 days of joint practices, I know it's just 2 days, but I think 2 days of joint practices looking inside there. So you're not playing him in a game. You're actually watching him in practice helps you out. And so if you get him at the right price, so you're not trading first round picks, if you get him, and I'm curious what your scenario for potential trade is going to be. If you get him at the right price, I don't see what the lose is. Like, I don't see what you give up a third round pick. And I also spent part of yesterday watching film, breaking down film, watching scouting film. So once you're done, I do want to talk about.
Sounds like you and I had the same exact evening yesterday.
Before we're done,
a list of pros and cons, Trey Lance strategies, and then watching Trey Lance throw footballs at practice on YouTube.
I watched him in practice for those 2 days, and I'm going to tell you right now, and I've broached this with you and Patrick as well. The mechanics did scare me, so I went and watched film, read some stories from some people that know more about QB mechanics than I do, which is a lot of folks. And there's a conversation there. But yes, for a third round pick, or let's say it's a second round pick, let's just say it's not a huge haul going back to San Francisco, I don't see the lose.
And also, the Vikings, we kind of brought this up in passing earlier in the week. The Vikings just feel like they're in a really good position to develop a quarterback, as Maya Mackey agrees on the other side of this studio door here.
She's like, it's Nutrisource time.
She's like, are we ready to talk about Nutrisource?
Yeah,
we will shortly.
The spot? She wants to know when the spot is. Everyone wants their spots.
We will shortly. And I think some people feel like, well, you have to, the Vikings offensive line is not very good. Okay, think about the teams that generally draft great quarterbacks, right? The Niners were kind of a rare case. The Chiefs, where it's a good team that gets their hands on a Trey Lance or a Patrick Mahomes. Usually it's a train wreck. I mean, look around. Like the Houston Texans are going to draft a quarterback probably. Good luck. Brandon Cooks is like 30 years old and living up to his namesake. He's like their weapon, right? Yep. They don't. So the Vikings have, again, it's not a perfect situation, but the Vikings have Justin Jefferson, TJ Hawkinson, two of the best pass catchers at their positions. They have one of the best left tackles, one of the best right tackles. They've got a head coach that has a proven track record of elevating Kirk Cousins, Matthew Stafford to new heights. I think circumstances matter. And so this is to me, this is a better time to gamble on a young quarterback, be it draft or a trade for Trey Lance, than some of the other points in Vikings history. And again, like Tavares Jackson was probably going to be a bust no matter what, but his two main wide receivers were Bobby Wade and Troy Williamson. And his head coach, albeit offensive-minded, was kind of a weird guy. Brad Childress wasn't like connecting with Tavares Jackson on a deep level probably, right? Christian Ponder was probably going to be a bust regardless, but his number 2 receiver for 2 years was Michael Jenkins. Like a 30-year-old Michael Jenkins, right? His head coach was a defensive guy that got fired, Leslie Frazier, a brilliant defensive coordinator. On the flip side, when you draft Dante Culpepper 25 years ago, and you plug him in with Randy Moss and Chris Carter in the year 2000, it's a lot easier to drive the car. So I just feel like any quarterback would have a better chance, even if they don't fully know what they're doing, because of the car that they would be driving here in Minnesota.
And
I think, go ahead, Jed. Go ahead, Jed.
Oh, I was going to say, imagine getting a look-see for almost nothing. Like a third-round pick for a quarterback that's nothing. So, like, if you could get that and get the development, that to me is the key thing. Because, yeah, you're right, Phil. What's your infrastructure? What do you get as an infrastructure? Do you get Childress? And Brad Childress did some really good things personnel-wise in retrospect, but we thought he was a quarterback whisperer. If you recall, he got a lot of credit for McNabb, and that was clearly Andy Reid now. So, yeah, this is why O'Connell's here. O'Connell is here because, and you know what? If Kevin O'Connell turns around tomorrow and says, Trey Lance, I've seen it, don't like it, I'd be like, okay, totally defer to you on that. With Rick, I always felt it was this, for lack of a better term, wishy-washy. I'm going to put my foot in the water, but I don't know about that. So yeah, I think you're right, Phil. I think if a guy like Trey Lance or a draft pick, if Kevin O'Connell says, I can work with this guy, to me, it gets a lot more credence than previous administrations here did.
If it's a third round pick, yeah, you take it to the bank and run, or as Judd said, Kwesi walks it, rows it. I don't care how he gets it. If that's the asking price, you hand deliver it to him. From San Francisco's side, I think they would be pretty foolish to deal him pre-training camp. So I think what's probably going to happen here from San Francisco's side, if I can be 49ers Daily, the executive producer of this program, if I was a 49ers fan, or if I was a 49ers general office person, probably what you're going to do here is drive up his value back to any type of heightened value, because right now it's in the absolute tank, right? It's in the absolute gutter. Mm-hmm. He's hurt. You have a guy who just came in, who's on the doorstep of bringing his team to the Super Bowl, who was inactive essentially for a few games this season, and now he's on the doorstep of going to the Super Bowl. If you're San Francisco, you drive up the value in practice, you hype him up in first-team reps, you get all this stuff up, and you create a bidding war, because it's probably what's going to happen in training camp, right? We saw this with Sam Bradford in 2016. A team's probably going to lose their quarterback some fluke, weird injury in the preseason. And then all of a sudden, a team becomes desperate. And now it becomes not just a third-round pick, it becomes a second or a first or multiple draft picks. So I don't think San Francisco is just going to give Trey Lance away between now and even the draft or even between now and training camp, because they may as well try to heighten the value up. That being said, if Lance's representatives or if the 49ers are like, you know what, screw it, we have Brock Purdy. We're set here. Let's take a third-round pick, cut our losses, and go for it. I just don't think San Francisco is in a rush necessarily to deal him whenever their season ends, whether it's with the Super Bowl win or if they lose this weekend.
That makes a lot of sense, except for this. There's no hyping him up is going to be almost impossible, because if Purdy is their guy, there's no first team reps to get. Like, training camp doesn't work like that. Like, it works like this. If Brock Purdy is the guy, he gets the reps. And Trey Lance is the backup, which actually might hurt him. I think the difference in the Bradford scenario and this too is Bradford was a finished product who had lost his job, but you knew you could plug him in. Lance brings a ton of unknown. So, like, if I lose my quarterback next September, my guy goes back to pass and snaps his damn leg, and that's it for him. Am I going to trade for a guy who is still deemed by some as a project? Like, Trey Lance presents a really interesting case study of what you do with a quarterback who's never gotten off the ground.
Yeah, I think so. I absolutely see the logic in not trading him at his absolute basement value. If you're the Niners, you're also trying to weigh, okay, we are absolutely in a Super Bowl window right now. And so if we can move a guy out that's not going to help us with that in the next 3 years for an asset in this year's draft, or for this year's, by this year I mean 2024 or 23, I mean, which brings me to the phone call that I would make here, okay? Because I think I can solve this for everyone involved.
Reckless speculation.
I make this phone call especially. Oh, look at that!
It's the bat
Declan's
phone.
got the red bat phone. They used to be an old Macadax bachelor pad back in the day. I
Gotham
don't think
City.
you can dial out with that phone. That's the one downfall.
No,
only
can't.
Commissioner Gordon can call you.
I'd love to know what type of things were ordered on that phone back in the day, but I probably don't want to know.
Now, again, you can't call out. So the only
I thought it worked at one time. I thought you just meant it didn't work.
no,
now.
there's literally no like the only way it works, and I had it plugged in as my home phone at one point.
Funny.
But the only thing that would happen is it would ring, and so I would only get like spam calls on it because like no one knew the number except for whatever. So I especially make this phone call if the Niners don't win the Super Bowl and they feel like, oh my God, it's the second time we've been there. It's the second time we got beat by Mahomes or something, or maybe Burrow beats them, or maybe they lose in Philadelphia. One of the only flaws on that team, they have the best scoring defense in the league. They have an incredible offensive line. They've got weapons all over the place. But one of the only flaws on that team is they were outside the top 10 in pressures and sacks defensively. They have Nick Bosa, who's one of the best, probably a future Hall of Famer, one of the best in the league. They don't really have a second dominant edge rusher. Mm-hmm. Hey, John Lynch. Mm-hmm. I would love to float the idea of a Danielle Hunter, Trey Lance package of some kind. We'd have to work out if there's draft picks involved. But let me start the bidding with this. How about, and Danielle Hunter, we love him, but we have major cap problems. We're not going to be able to pay him what he's worth in his prime, John. He's still 28 years old. Now, we know that, based on our conversation yesterday, that edge rushers usually the elite peak for them is 28, 29, and then they start declining. And so if you're the Vikings, this would be, again, like we talked about yesterday, a great time to cash in high on Danielle Hunter. Could you get the Niners to say, all right, forget about this third round business. We'll give you Danielle Hunter and maybe our fifth. And you give us Trey Lance and 2 of your 3 third round comp picks that you're projected to get in the 2023 draft. So the Vikings would get 3 years of Trey Lance. They would get 2 third-round picks and they would offload a huge chunk of money and a huge conundrum in what do you do with Danielle Hunter, who's going to want a new contract. And all you would give up is a 5th-round pick, and you give up Danielle, but he's not going to be part of this thing in 2 or 3 years anyways. He doesn't fit the window of Jefferson, Darisaw, Hawkinson, and your new quarterback. What do you think? Who says no?
Well, I think the Niners
Speculation.
probably don't give you a 3rd-round compensatory pick, but I do think that you could probably get a later-round pick from them back. But I mean, if the Niners are obviously going to know what you sort of laid out so eloquently yesterday, Phil, which might create some problems.
But they would only in this scenario care about winning a Super Bowl in 2023 and putting Danielle Hunter with 1 or 2 years of prime left next to Nick Bosa.
If Kevin O'Connell thinks that Trey Lance can work, if Kevin O'Connell knows from behind the scenes that Shanahan has him on the right track, and if Trey Lance can agree to be mobile but not stupid, because I'll go back to in week 1, I found stories yesterday against that game that San Fran played at Soldier Field that Trey Lance took 3 hits he shouldn't have, and then in week 2 he got hurt. But if you could contain him to be smart, yeah, I'd do that trade.
This is the thing for the Niners, and this is the reason why I included other picks. For the Niners right now, and for the league, Danielle Hunter is a lot more valuable than Trey Lance. Now, I get that you would be getting 3 years of Lance and the idea of what he could become, and he could be a franchise quarterback. Right now, he's nothing. He's a theory, right? He's a project still. So I think, and if the discussions are you could get Lance for a 3rd-round pick, well, is Danielle Hunter worth more than a 3rd-round pick? To which I say yes. So then the Niners would have to kick something else in to make it an even trade. So it would be Lance plus, and I'm saying Lance plus 2/3 for Hunter and a 5th. You could finagle it however you want, but I think it has to be Lance plus blank for Danielle Hunter.
Yes, I would do that trade.
If you're the Vikings?
If I'm the Vikings, oh yeah. Yes. Dex?
I don't think so. I don't think the Vikings do that. I don't think the Vikings trade one of their premier pass rushers, even though the contract conundrum is the issue here, with Danielle, because they're going to have to pay him and don't really have a lot of money that's floating around on their salary cap. So I get that point. But I think trading a premier pass rusher for a complete unproven project quarterback
this
on
is
top
why
of
I want
mid-round
this is why
picks,
I want the draft picks back too. This is why it's Lance plus. Lance
plus. But then third round compensatory picks? No. I need something. I need a sweeter deal than that. I need something more than that, in my opinion.
Well, the Niners don't have a 1st or a 2nd-round pick, which is also part of
their problem from the Trey Lance trade.
Mm-hmm.
Now
so recoup some value by getting someone that can help you if they don't win the Super Bowl. Is there a final piece to get your pass rush to that peak level?
So young quarterbacks are always a theory. They're always a theory. I mean, unless it's Andrew Luck or Lawrence or heck, Joe Burrow. But for the most part. So here's where I would make a case that if Kevin O'Connell wants to pull the trigger on Trey Lance, I would pull the trigger. He is a theory. He is a young guy. But you know what? He's had 2 years now in an infrastructure that's really damn good. So, would I rather take a chance on drafting Richardson in the 1st round or acquiring Trey Lance? I think you know more about Trey Lance. And that might scare you away totally. But what I'm saying is there is more internally, there's going to be more intelligence about Trey Lance than a lot of these quarterbacks who we just talk about because they ran a non-NFL system in college but look good. So this is why this intrigues me completely. And just quickly, so on the mechanics, Trey Lance has a dip in his throw. He's got a long motion, but more importantly, he can take the ball up too high, but instead of throwing it, he then dips it down. They've worked on that. And the dip is actually not the worst thing. If you watch arm slots of quarterbacks today, Trey Lance's problem is he's got to have the ball lower before the dip. He takes too much time in going from here to here to throw it.
Football.
So, but these things have been worked on. And that's again what I like. He's had 2 years of working on this with people in the profession.
Aaron Rodgers had bad mechanics.
Yes.
I ironed him out for 3 years and
he's
became Aaron Rodgers.
And Aaron Rodgers still has a dip. Tedford, where he played at Cal, had him with the ball too high. They brought it down. But you know what? Aaron Rodgers also learned by sitting behind Brett Favre. Trey Lance has learned that this is what intrigues me here. This is a really interesting, I think, appropriate discussion. And then just one more thing on the reckless speculation at 49er daily bandwagon.
Speculation.
Until it's all said and done, okay? I have to wonder if San Francisco, so let's say, Phil, that your scenario takes place. They get close, but no cigar. And Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch get one bite at the apple, 1 year of a guy coming home to the Bay. Tom Brady.
Mm-hmm.
That hasn't been dismissed yet.
And they have about $16 million in cap space right now before restructure, so they could pretty easily make that work without giving up anything. They could just sign him.
And like
free agent.
Brock Purdy might be the quarterback of the future then, but I don't think Brock is going to go into John Lynch's office and bitch up a storm.
And you still have Brock for like 2 more years after the 1 year of Brady.
Just a lot.
It's very interesting.
Reckless speculation.
This reckless speculation session presented by our friends at Nutrisource. Our patient dogs waiting for us to talk about their favorite food. Nutrisource is the official dog food of Purple Daily and Mackie and Judd. You can see on the screen, this is a hungry Maya Mackie looking, saying, "Where's my dinner? Where's my dinner?"
I love that.
The gut and digestion health is a key ingredient of Nutrisource, a key benefit, I should say.
Yep, and that's what this little girl Stella knows. She's 12, okay? But you know what? She's healthy and she's happy, and she just went to the vet and got the seal of approval. And you know what? A big part of that, Nutrisource, not only their food but their treats as well, have helped Stella's gut health, have helped keep her healthy, and that is absolutely key. So not only is the food fantastic for your dog, but it keeps them healthy and it keeps them young. And that's the most important thing. Nutrisource.
NutrisourcePetFoods.com to find a retailer near you. Thank you guys for supporting our sponsors here. A little bonus episode that turned reckless here on Purple Daily. We'll see you guys on Write That Down as well today.